to the Hawkeye Insider YouTube page. Sean Bock from HawkeyeInsider.com, one of the lead recruiting basketball analysts on the site. Here to break down the commitment of four-star forward Ethan Harris out of Camas, Washington. Iowa head coach Ben McCollum and the rest of the Iowa staff received pretty big news earlier today when Harris decided to announce his commitment to the Hawkeyes, called the Iowa staff earlier this morning, put it on social media later in the day, right before Iowa basketball kicked off against UMass in the final non-conference game of the 2025 season for Kirk Ferentz and the Hawkeyes. This is a really big win for Ben McCollum and the rest of the Iowa staff. Getting Harris, who's out of the Pacific Northwest, not necessarily in the backyard of Gonzaga and Washington, but you're still in the state of Washington, so that's pretty close. And for Iowa to beat out those programs for a player like Harris, who listed at 6'9", extremely skilled, four-star prospect, a top 100 prospect on 24/7 Sports Composite. Like I said, tremendous size at 6'8", 6'9", great versatility, great passer, pretty good shooter. Could improve his efficiency based on how he performed this summer. But the lot to like about this commitment for Iowa. Iowa was able to go into the state of Washington, beat out Mark Few and Gonzaga, beat out Danny Sprinkle in Washington. Also beat out schools like Boise State and Colorado State, who are moving to the Pac-12 next season, to land Harris, who is a very, very intriguing prospect for Iowa. We'll break him down right now. Listed at 6'8" on some outlets, but on other outlets, some people kind of consider him a 6'9". So we'll put him at around 6'8" and a half. He's listed at about 205 pounds. Looks like he's pretty solid built for his size, but could obviously afford to add on a couple of more pounds once he gets to the college level and has to compete in the Big Ten from a physicality standpoint. But there are a lot of skills that are there for Harris. He's a plus shooter, plus ball handler for his size at 6 foot and a half, 6'8" and a half. Very good rebounder, but one of his best traits is his defense. He was first team Pro 16, which is the Puma circuit, all defense. He was first team all defense. And that's something that I think is really intriguing about Harris is that he can guard 1 through 4 on the defensive side of the floor, can rebound effectively inside, guard on the perimeter, guard shooters, switch on to guards, switch on to quicker guards, and just guard different positions. And I think that versatility too is really important in this Ben McCollum system, as we know with the hybrid forwards, where they really allow their threes and fours to initiate the offense. Harris is going to fit in really well in that aspect, but also his ability to space the floor and be a very complementary player on the offensive end. You can use him in various go screens, various shooting actions. You can use him as a movement shooter. He's able to make plays off the bounce and be a playmaker at that 3-4 spot. And those pieces of his game are very important because that just adds to what he can bring to the floor for Iowa. And he pairs also really well with some of the younger guys that they have at those 3-4 spots. Obviously, you have Alvaro Folgueras for this season and likely next season too for Iowa. He's going to fit in, start at that 4 spot. But then you have a really interesting dynamic at those 3 and 4 positions with guys like, this is Tavion Banks' last year right now. We'll see if, what happens with the hardship waivers or whatever kind of waivers there are to maybe get him another year. But you have Trey Thompson, who could play the 3 or the 4, kind of fits into that hybrid role. You have Cooper Koch, who's another great fit there. And you have Tate Sage, too, who's more of a 3. But as we said, Iowa and Ben McCollum like to use their forwards in different kind of ways to kind of, emphasize the hybrid role where these guys are more versatile, can play the 3 or 4, and heck, maybe even the 2, but more of those 3-4 spots for Iowa. And Harris, I mean, when I see him on film, he kind of strikes me as more of a 3 from a playing standpoint. But, he's kind of got the build of a 4, and he has a frame too that can add on more size as well. But it just seems to me that he's a really strong complementary fit with some of those other guys like Cooper Koch, Trey Thompson, and Tate Sage. Those guys will really be able to space the floor. And then obviously you have Alvaro for another year too. Those guys could really space the floor effectively, create off the dribble, and just add a lot of versatility into that 3-4 spot where, there's not really guys who are lockstep at playing each position when another guy is on the floor, they can really work together well in certain areas. And, I think Harris fits that mold to a T. And it's interesting too, because obviously the Iowa staff was really focused in on landing Waukee Northwest 4-star winger hybrid, Colin Rice, who ended up going to Nebraska. But honestly, the fit of Harris kind of makes more sense just from a versatility standpoint. I mean, yes, you have Colin Rice, very good player. I think he's going to have a really good career at Nebraska. But I think Ethan Harris maybe gives you more a little bit a little bit more in terms of a size perspective and is more of kind of a playmaker and can do more off the bounce as Rice. He's kind of got a tighter handle than Rice, and is able to do more as a passer than Rice. Although I do think Rice is probably more advanced as a scorer right now and more efficient in that way. But I think Harris brings you a lot in terms of, okay, this guy can do more off the bounce. This guy can create more off the bounce and just be able to initiate offense too in certain sets and certain movements where Iowa does their read and react to the ball thing. I think Harris is a perfect fit for what Iowa needs at that position and what they need in this class too, because that's really what they've been going for. They've wanted a combo forward and they've also wanted a guard, potentially two guards. And to go into our next point, but also let's hit on this first before we go into the guards and what's next for Iowa in this class. Trey Thompson, you beat out Matt Painter and Rick Barnes. Yes, Thompson went to the 2025 class, but those are two pretty, strong head coaches who you beat out. This for Ethan Harris, you beat out Mark Few, who, Gonzaga, obviously one of the most successful programs in college basketball nowadays. It's really risen. You beat that, they wanted him back. You beat out Gonzaga for Harris. You also beat out Washington, who I'm not saying, obviously, Washington has, had a really bad year last year under new head coach Danny Sprinkle, was one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. But they had a really good portal class, and they got a lot of money there too. I'm not saying that Harris's recruitment, had a lot to do with money, but you beat out a program that I think is on the rise. I think there are a lot of people that think that Washington is going to be a pretty, solid team in the Big Ten this upcoming season. And, it seems like a program on the rise. Obviously, Sprinkle can coach, but to beat out those two programs for a guy like Harris, and that's an area where Iowa, I mean, I know this is under first year head coach Ben McCollum, but the Pacific Northwest is not really, Iowa doesn't really go out there much, especially basketball recruiting. I mean, heck, even football recruiting. But basketball recruiting, like I couldn't really tell you at the top of my head the last guy that they got from that area. Like it was probably before my time. And, I remember the old staff kind of like recruiting guys out there, but I don't really remember them having like, tons of traction with them. But for Iowa to go into that region and beat out those respected programs to get Harris, that is a huge, huge coup. And Harris is the guy too that, like I said, Iowa head coach Ben McCollum deserves a lot of credit for this one, but so does Iowa assistant coach Bryson Williams. Bryson Williams was a huge, 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 huge factor in winning this recruitment for Iowa. He was resilient, and I mean resilient in going after Harris. And I just think from a culture standpoint too, it makes a lot of sense for Harris. And it's kind of similar to Trey Thompson in a way where, this Iowa staff just seemed to hit it off with Harris and his family and just like the culture from a culture perspective and personality perspective, it just made all the sense in the world. So but Bryson Williams and the rest of the staff, especially Bryson, deserves a lot of credit for winning this recruitment. And Harris just feels like a really natural fit. We'll have more reaction, more intel on HawkeyeInsider.com about Harris. But what's next for Iowa in the 2026 class? That is where things are going to get interesting. They have four-star combo guard Joseph Hartman on campus this weekend for an official visit. It sounds like Iowa and Minnesota are the top two schools for him. Obviously, Nico Medved has a pretty good history of guards and kind of those combo guards from his time at Colorado State. He's been able to recruit a couple talented guards, has kind of those pitches that he has with a couple of the talented guys that he put into the league when he was at Colorado State. So the Gophers are going to be a factor in that. Iowa has him on campus this weekend, as we mentioned. Kind of that combo, bigger guard at 6'4", 6'5", very good prospect, shoots the heck out of the ball. I think he shot like 44% from three. He's the son of Florida associate head coach Carlin Hartman. The Gators are not involved in his recruitment. Joseph and his family decided that they wanted to kind of cover out their own path for Joseph, so he will not be following his father to Florida. It sounds like it's an Iowa-Minnesota battle, as I mentioned before. Iowa has a really good chance of making an impact this weekend and ended up getting them. Michigan's in there as well, but most of the talk has been Iowa and Minnesota to this point. Hartman, we have more on the site about him. You can check him out on HawkeyeInsider.com, and there's an official visit preview up there. Don't want to spoil too much, but he's on campus right now. And then later this month, Iowa will be hosting four-star guard Quentin Coleman for an official visit. Quinn Coleman is a 6'3", 6'2" guard out of the Principia School in St. Louis. Iowa recruited him very heavily when they were at Drake. Really wanted him at Drake. Came here, watched him win a Peach Jam title with Bradley Beal Elite, and the Hawkeyes have decided to really get involved with him and really like what he brings to the table. As I mentioned, won a Peach Jam title with Bradley Beal Elite. Very quick, twitchy guard, shoots the ball really well from three, is able to make plays off the dribble as you need to in a guard. He's pretty twitchy, pretty slippery, can get to his spots, can finish at the rim, can set others up well. Just seems like the perfect lead guard that would be awesome in Ben McCollum's system. Sounds like Iowa, Texas Tech, Wake Forest are some of the schools that are really involved there. Illinois was involved. The Illini are no longer involved. Iowa will begin him on campus later this month. And he's a guard that I think would be a perfect fit for the Hawkeyes at that lead guard spot. But it'll be interesting to see if Hartman wants to come on too, if both Hartman and Coleman want to come, if the Hawkeyes are going to take both of those guys. But it's looking like a very solid class right now for Ben McCollum and the rest of the Iowa staff. We'll have more coverage, obviously, at HawkeyeInsider.com for a full breakdown of the Hawkeyes and what they have added in this class and what Harris brings to the table and whatnot. And stay tuned too, because obviously the 2026 class, some big official visits, obviously this weekend, and the weekend's coming up. But then the 2027 class, that's another really big class for this Iowa staff, with the top target on board being four-star point guard Chase Branham, who will take an official visit to Iowa later this month. Hawkeyes are competing against some pretty big programs for him. So basketball recruiting in Iowa City is for the men's side is ramping up. It's This staff has done a fantastic job using their relationships, using their connections, using kind of just their personalities and what they've been able to sell in terms of their success at their previous stops. It's been really fascinating to see, and it's also really encouraging to see what the on-court product looks like this year so that maybe they can land some of these, other higher ranked guys in the upcoming classes too. But Ethan Harris, really good win for this Iowa staff. Really nice fit at that hybrid combo forward spot. Like I said, a guy who can make plays off the dribble really well for his size, shoot the basketball really well, is also a very good defender. And I think that's something that Iowa fans love to hear. Obviously, with some of the defensive issues that the Hawkeyes have had in the last couple of years, I think Harris is a perfect fit and a very athletic, just versatile option at those 3, 4 spots, and will really make an impact on both ends of the floor for the Hawkeyes. So Sean Bach here. You can follow me on Twitter at Spock247. Check us out at HawkeyeInsider.com for a lot more analysis on Iowa basketball's newest commitment in Ethan Harris and what is next for the Iowa basketball staff.